Oh, yes. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Three Man Weave College Basketball Podcast. Matthew Cox running point at a hyperloop speed per usual. Let's slow it down. Slow it down. Mr. McKeon, how are you? Mr. Root, how are you? I'm excited to hear that you'll be coming down to my neck of the woods. Actually, it's your father's neck of the woods as he resides in Tampa. I'm in Naples from a satellite location, always on the go. I'll go to Kai for his opening statement for today's episode. But it's February 21st. I mean, we're in the bowels of the season, Mr. McKeon. The bowels.
We are right in the bowels, Matthew. Yes, February indeed. My least favorite month of the entire year. I just don't like February. Don't like it. Don't care for it. But it's almost
a bottom
done.
3 month. I think it's a bottom.
Yeah, and you know what? March Madness is upon us nearly. We're going to get the bracket. We're going to go to Vegas. We're going to have a lot of fun. So I'm stoked. February, go away. Let's finish off the season quickly and get into March.
Let's do it. Yeah, that sounds great, Matt. As you mentioned, I'm going to take
your thoughts are good.
Take a little trip down to Tampa, see my father before the season is out. My mom's got a place in Scottsdale, so I'll see her or not Scottsdale, Phoenix area, before and after the Final Four. So I'm checking the family boxes. You know, gotta give love to the parents. They made me who I am today, Matt. The podcaster I am today. I'm sure they're super proud of my semi-career choice here. But yeah, let's get into it. I can't wait to hear about Kai's excursion to the DMV area. A whole lot to get to in this wonderful show.
Yes, a dedicated thought, Mr. McKeon, putting on the big J Journo had. I thought he was sort of shoved aside as a nothing lowercase j blogger, but got it all straightened out, got it sorted, as our friends across the pond would say. And there you were, courtside, covering a good game, Kai? Or not really?
No, the game actually
not
really
a good
sucked.
Game. Actually, a bad game.
Yeah, low scoring. It sucked.
And an awesome teaser to launch us into today's episode. But yes, it is still February. We'll get through its Roundup. We've all that. Three-man thoughts. Game previews and some reviews of your reviews at the end. Before we get any farther, let's promote those who promote us. None greater than Jay Pitty, a.k.a. Joe Paskov, the best in the college basketball music intro and outro sphere. Please follow us on Twitter. That's at 3MW_CBB. The same handle applies on Instagram. Subscribe to our podcast. Amazon, Spotify, YouTube. Yes, YouTube. If you're watching live right now, that's almost a mandatory request. We could make you stop watching this or pause the presentation and make you like and then re-enter. We could, but we can't do that. So just out of the goodness of your heart, go ahead and do that for us. That only helps us, and helping us helps you in return. And when you do subscribe and review, 5-star variety, especially on the Apple platform, is what we'd prefer. And we'll get to those reviews at the end of the show. A lot of reviews today. Very nice. We appreciate all of the banter and the fodder and the discussion. Personal corner, Kai, do you want to talk about your trip to the DMV, or would you like to save the beef of that for your thought?
Yeah, well,
later on.
I do have a thought on the credential thing, just to air the stuff out there. Overall, Georgetown needs its own arena. The NBA arena, not cool, in my opinion. Maryland, very nice. College Park, cool area. Georgetown is in a ridiculous area, like the actual surrounding area of the campus. I mean, these kids, I'm guessing mommy and daddy's money helps a little bit to go to Georgetown. Matt, that's all I'll say.
Yeah, good grades, maybe. A little scholarship.
It's a nice campus. Very nice campus.
And Jim, you have anything to add in your personal life?
I have nothing to add. No, don't.
Best bet show. It's coming.
I was going to say
tell you, contract is in their hands. It's going to be. I can't imagine it get past Saturday, but I know we've been crying wolf the past couple of weeks, folks. But it is a great sponsor. There's a lot of cool stuff coming. We're presuming it'll be at. Do we say 9 a.m. Central? For weekdays?
Yeah, for weekdays.
Soft verbal agreement amongst the three of the Threevers. I think that's my personal lean.
Yep. So that should tell you, if we're talking what time it's going to be at, we're pretty confident it's happening. It's 99.9% happening. We just
a couple of knocks there for you.
0.1%.
Yep. But just not to jinx it, I'll make sure I pay my respects to the gods, the powers that be, the old gods and the new website updates. Kai with a little
I wrote
a redux of his experience, and we'll talk about it. So yeah, you'll get a hold of Georgetown, Maryland, Phil. But that concludes the intro. Let's round it up.
Let's do it, Matthew. Talking news and notes, of course. But before we do, a quick shout out to CBB Analytics, one of our loyal season-long sponsors here, Mr. McEwen. It is a wonderful website full of data, stats, visualizations, all kinds of information.
It sure is, man. CBBanalytics.com. Check them out if you haven't. If you like stats, if you like college basketball, if you like conditional formatting, CBB Analytics is for you. It's the best 30,000-foot view of the numbers in college hoops. You might have seen some pretty cool graphs circling around Twitter with little college basketball logos around them for various different stats. A lot of those come from CBB Analytics. The data, the graphics they can spit out to just really easily visualize certain trends, certain tendencies for teams across the country is very, very cool. It's a useful site for sports bettors, a useful site for casual fans, for diehard fans as well. Everybody would like CBBanalytics.com. You can use our promo code WEAVE at checkout to get $40 off your subscription. I believe there's also a free trial phase you can try out. Just overall, a very cool site, Matt, that I think more people need to know about. Go check them out, CBBanalytics.com.
That's right. Get on it. Check out CBB Analytics. Hey, no recruiting news. I'm just going to get that out of the way. Boom. Love it. Talking on the court stuff. But we have a wonderful coach section because Matthew, Penny Hardaway and Rick Pitino gave us all kinds of gems on Sunday, just repeatedly driving over their teams in their bus, backing up, back over them, hurling the players under the bus. Pitino talked about how his roster was too slow and too unathletic. Then he went on to blast the St. John's facilities. It's like, all right, man, you took the job. You know what you're signing up for. Said it was the most unenjoyable experience of his life to be coaching this year. Outrageous. Quite a tirade here. What do you make of this? He did take a small ownership of, yes, I built the roster, but it was very much I'm sick of these kids. It was a John Calipari, these kids rant instead of my guys.
Yeah, it's just I think it's a microcosm of like this season. We've seen just a lot of soapbox stuff. I feel like in the new era where you just change your team so drastically year to year, you're just going to get a lot of extreme. Wow, this didn't really work out. Like you threw you threw ketchup and brown sugar and chocolate into a pan kai, and you came out really just a really gross taste. And yeah, fun to see two of these examples at the most marquee, most prominent programs. With coaches who will not mince any words. Appreciate this. We saw some of this with Nick Cronin earlier in the year, but now Nick Cronin like is waxing poetic about his team. It's really like again, it's the most dramatic time in college basketball history. Very much taking after our beloved father figure, the NBA, which just reeks of drama. I'm sure Jim will go into a whole soliloquy on the Bucks, but anyway, I digress. Yeah, it's just a lot of this year, and I don't know if I like it. I'm sort of torn on my take on this.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound like sour grapes for Pitino, right? He's calling it the most unenjoyable season of his lifetime. Pretty funny stuff. Quinn Slazinski, guys, I don't know if you saw this. He currently plays for West Virginia, played for Pitino at Iona, not Louisville, but he played at Louisville, ironically. So he had some good quotes about this. He was like, it's funny, like basically Pitino said, let him off easy in the media. He said, I've heard him tell me like some of the craziest things I've ever heard come out of someone's mouth. One time he said, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. It was kind of out of love. I didn't box out, and this was in practice. And he looks at me. I don't know if I can say this. Out of love, he said he will chop me up in 7 pieces and send me back to Detroit or Houston or wherever the bleep I'm from.
I love that.
Which is good stuff.
I love that.
That's a coach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, is that something that if Greg Marshall doesn't punch a player, he's allowed to say? Is that over the line? I don't really care. It doesn't bug me. I mean, Kai, sometimes coaches are mean. They got to get your attention. And Pitino certainly has that gear to him. I'm sure Tom Izzo has said as bad or worse, and we hold him no fault over that. It's just part of that coach-player relationship. But Matt, Penny Hardaway also went over and had a little dance with the media, talking about how frustrated he is with the team, their lack of competitiveness. What was it? Something like, I don't know what that was, but it wasn't competing in their blowout loss to SMU on Sunday. We've seen the chemistry questions bubble all season for this team, and coming into the year, it did look like, all right, they've got like 12 guys that are going to want to play. And now he's struggling to get the same level of commitment that he wants from certain guys. And it's just weird. He's like, I'll play guys, and then I can't get the effort out of them. It's like, play the other guys? I don't know. It's just bizarre. Kai, do you want to read the quote you have in the outline here, because it's very much it's the players, not me.
Yeah, Penny. He says, I get a lot of negativity. We win 10 games and lose 1. It's going to be the worst loss in the world. I put us in a position to win every single night. I can't get out on the court and play as well. Wow.
Yeah, just like I'm doing my job. Also, he's complaining about that negativity. Every team gets this. Check any search UConn after last night because they lost once. Search Purdue after they lost once to Ohio State. Anybody can win 10 in a row and then lose once and get a ton of negativity. Penny, that's how it works. Welcome to the coaching profession. Curious if he stays there long term, if he gets sick of it, if he's kind of on the Stackhouse track of, man, get me back to the pros. Very, very curious because, boy, both these guys were rather frustrated. And speaking of frustrated, last night after UConn lost to Creighton, a clip surfaced of Dan Hurley telling a fan, I quote, "I will knock you out," which, Kai, a lot of people rushed to be like, whoa, oh my God, cancel Danny Hurley. And I just thought it was hilarious. He didn't go punch the guy. Okay. If he does that, yes, we have a problem. But, oh, come on. This is hilarious shit talk. I love it.
No coach has risen up my rankings of likability faster than Dan Hurley. I used to hate this guy a couple years ago. But then after seeing him in press conferences and seeing how like intentionally or unintentionally funny he really is, I'm really starting to like him. And this was another one of those funny Hurley moments. And he's not actually going to knock the guy out. I'm sure the fan said something completely inappropriate to him
Like
to
way
deserve
worse
that
than
response.
what Hurley said. Yeah.
He didn't actually punch him. Nothing, man. It's nothing burger for me.
Matt,
Also, real quick, Jim,
you're going to string
it
him
just
up
hit
or do you
me.
think this is fine?
No, it's fine. It's awesome. Now that I think about it, it makes me want Bobby Hurley and Dan Hurley in the same conference. I know we kind of thought sort of speculated as to who might be the guy at DePaul, but if we can get two Hurleys and their mouths flying and sounding off post game at fans, especially at like a DePaul game, you get not a lot of fans there right now. So anything you might say at a coach can be audibly heard very clearly. So you could get some of this as well.
Would you imagine
real quick,
Big East-
just hit me. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Matthew.
The weave jinx, very real. I dubbed
no.
Virginia and Memphis back last episode. So I need to stop saying things like that. Just have better takes, maybe.
Yeah. Hey, Virginia did beat Wake Forest over the weekend.
I guess
and
they
then
did.
Lost by
It felt like a
34 on
loss.
Big Monday.
It felt like a loss. It was such a bad game. It really did. I know it was a win, but
Yeah, the old 49-47. VCU and Dayton are familiar with that final score. Had the same thing earlier this year. Matt, would you imagine Big East refs are starting a GoFundMe to keep the two Hurleys
Yes.
out of the same conference? Like, come on, do we really have to deal with two of these guys out of 11? That doesn't sound.
yeah, we need more Greg McDermotts if you're a referee, right? Like, I don't know. I just imagine he's the most diplomatic with the referees, just stereotyping his personality.
Yeah. All right. Injuries, suspensions, dismissals. We got a couple of these guys. Injuries. Jalen Williams of Auburn, initially feared possibly done for the year with a knee injury. It did not announce exactly what it was, but he is out a few weeks, Kai. A few weeks. That is the quote. I would say this could be like let's kick the can down the road and maybe figure it out later. Potentially could still be out for the year. It was an awkward fall against Kentucky. He's certainly important for them. Kind of that tweener piece that connects the guards and the bigs. How worried are you about Auburn if he is not in the lineup?
Yeah, I think he's pretty key. I think Auburn can still be pretty good. Obviously, their ceiling takes a hit if they lose Jalen Williams. He is pretty versatile in what he can do on both ends of the floor. He gives them a lot of lineup optionality. I do think it matters. Are they still a really good team without him? Yes. Are they a title contender without him? I might stop short of that just because of the ceiling he provides.
Matt, Auburn concern level. I mean, we'll talk about their loss to Kentucky in a little bit, so maybe you can holster it for that. You're muted anyway, so I'll move on. Josh Jefferson of St. Mary's is out for the season. Also a knee injury, had to get surgery. It was initially said indefinitely, but officially confirmed today is out for the year. Really tough. Matt, I know you're a Mason Forbes fan for the Gales.
Huge.
They did still get a victory over San Francisco last night, essentially clinching the league. I mean, they just got to take care of business. They could even still lose to Gonzaga in the finale and still win the league by a game. But man, have they been rolling? Does this limit their ceiling to you, or are they still going to be just fine with your boy?
They'll be fine. They'll be fine. It's a system. It's a machine. Just insert new cog. Like, I mean, Jefferson's really good, no question. I'm not going to diminish his impact. But like pre-season, I think Ben was like, we have a litany of guys to just fill what he does. So I bet a new organism in the form of Mason Forbes or Alex Dukas and role shifting will just kind of fill out that gap, and they'll be okay because it's St. Mary's since Randy Bennett. They're awesome. They haven't skipped a beat since those weird non-conference stumbles.
Yeah, Forbes moved into the starting lineup last night against San Francisco. It does seem like maybe that's the best or the closest proxy to what they have with Jefferson going forward. And then sometimes playing small with Barrett, with Dukas, a little more wingy. But man, Matt, it's been really all about Gus. You look at their on-off stats, and it's like Gus is the guy. Like when he's on the court, they are better. When he's not, like Mahaney is nothing per on-off stats, which is wild to me. But
Gus plays some defense, which is important. Yeah, Mahaney defensively, but Gus tees up. We like that.
they could continue to be rock solid. We'll see. We get to WCC madness in Vegas. This could help Gonzaga sneak in with the auto bid there. If you got a somewhat weakened foe in St. Mary's, potentially helping the conference as a whole. Last injury to mention, Michigan. Sorry to kick you while you're down, but the injury bug bit you. Olivier Kamwa out for the season for the Wolverines. Kai, it goes from bad to worse. When it rains, it pours, said Terrence Oglesby. Likely going to finish with the worst record in the Big Ten, and this is not going to help them get out of that hole.
Juwan Howard, goodbye. I don't know if you can finish in last place in the Big Ten at Michigan and expect to keep the old job there. So I'd expect him to be gone. I don't know, but I would.
Yeah, combined with the off-court stuff he's had, like
Yes.
run-ins with opposing coaches, his own strength staff, et cetera, et cetera. A full two games behind Ohio State, who fired their own coach. So that's kind of tells you what kind of hole they're in there. And then Matt, in the dismissal zone, also in the Big Ten, Penn State, Kanye Clary is off the team. I don't know exact details behind this, how much of it is him leaving versus them escorting him out of the building, et cetera. But big time scorer, 17 a game, can get to the rim, has a lot of great finishes in his bag at the rim with floaters and stuff. It doesn't seem like it's fully hurt Penn State, and Mike Rhodes has done a pretty nice job making them respectable in his first year. What do you see for Clary in the future? Is this a guy that's going to go be like a 22 a game scorer at a mid-major? Is that what it feels like to you?
This is a vintage amicable breakup. Both parties better without each other. I firmly believe that. They're 2-1 without him. Clary's kind of like the identity of the roster that Rhodes has, but like it's not really Rhodes' identity. I think the way they've won has been skewing more toward Rhodes' true VCU gritty identity. I think next season you'll see a much more Rhodesy type of roster. This year it's just like, okay, got some really good offensive pieces. Just a lot of, very much an island of misfit toys. And I think Clary, while talented, was one of those. So he'll be awesome somewhere else. I think Penn State will be better off without him. So both parties, kumbaya.
Could potentially get the fifth year of Ace Baldwin. We'll see. That's kind of crucial for Penn State next year, considering the just relationship he has with Rhodes and extension of the coach in terms of style, et cetera. Kai, let's go to you for our Reddit stat of the day.
Bum, 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 bum. That's our jingle for Reddit stat of the day. Username,
that
it's working.
really got me
We're working on
pumped.
it. We're working on it. It's a work in progress. Okay, Grey Docs, Reddit username here. The top 4 teams in the Big 12 are a combined 56-1 at home this season. Even if you expand that out to the top half, 7 teams, they're still 95-6. Whoa, Jim, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's incredible. I believe the only loss in that group is Baylor in triple overtime to TCU at home. So they have not lost if the game is 50 minutes or less at home.
That's wild.
Pretty good.
Wild.
Yeah, tough.
Wild stuff.
It's tough to win on the road, Kai.
It sure is, Jim.
We should also mention the big brawl that broke out in the Southland. Incarnate Word, Texas A&M Commerce. I don't know all the exact suspensions from it. Those might not even come out till the next game because the beat writers on those programs or lack thereof don't really get to the bottom of things. But Matt, there were a lot of punches thrown. It was legitimately like a melee, the kind you see in the middle of a street. Yeah, it was just there's so many people involved that it was hard to break it up. There just weren't enough people involved. The refs had already left the court at that point. Typically, they're the peacemakers or the pacifiers of that group. It was. Would you say it was more entertaining, or are you jumping on the no more handshake lines extreme take?
No, I'm definitely not in the lame ladder camp. I'm in the fun. This was just a crazy turn of events, and the refs weren't being paid enough to be at that game, so not surprised to see them walk off early. But the cameraman working overtime to keep the footage going, that's what made it good for all of us. So well done behind the lens.
We don't know who you are, but you are a real man of genius.
Yo man's work.
We appreciate you for keeping that in there. Shout out to Colgate for winning the Patriot for, I believe, the 1 seed for the 5th time in 6 seasons. And they have won it 6 in a row or been tied atop the league 6 in a row. Kai, just an incredible run by Matt Langel. I would say this is not his best team, potentially even his worst of the last 5 or 6 years, but the Patriots down and they got a big win at Lafayette late to clinch this. It's if you were playing match play in golf, 4-3. They won it by 4 games with 3 to play, or 3 games with 4 to play. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Domination, like you said, not the best Colgate team in quite a while. Still dangerous 15 or 16 seed. If we're looking at it like that from the NCAA tournament perspective, like I'm not sure I really want to see them as a 1 seed or a 2 seed.
I'm gonna say they get rolled in the
Yeah.
tournament.
I think they could, but
they have no athleticism and they have less wing shooting
Yeah.
than they've had in the past. Ugh,
that's true.
I'm nervous for them, man.
It's a smart
Maybe
team.
it's
I think we get routed.
maybe it's the get up by 10 early and live bet against them because
first to 15.
yeah, athleticism could overwhelm as the game goes on. All right, last note here. Sebastian Mack got ejected from UCLA's loss to Utah over the weekend for a random and angry elbow to Brandon Carlson's trachea. Kai, what on earth was going on here? Why did he throw this elbow? Why was it so extreme? This was bizarre. And did it cost UCLA the game?
Clear cheap shot. I already said the trachea line from Statham's movie on another show, so I can't say it again. It's not cool to say it twice on different outlets. But yeah, popped him. Cheap shot. Would not be surprised if he was suspended for a game, but I don't know if anything's been announced for that. Yeah, don't do that. Come on, man. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, they lost by 1 at the buzzer. I think
Yeah,
you
it
might
matters
have
a
been
little
able
bit.
to help had you stuck around. Offense got stuck in the mud. Utah never wins on the road, and yet they did it. Hey, big one for the Utes. Could potentially end up keeping them in the NCAA tournament, especially as UCLA trends up, and up, and that win looks better and better. All right, Matthew, that is it for Roots Roundup. Kick it over to you for We've Saw That, and my man Kai is going to update our sweet ass rundown on the side of the video feed.
Yeah, it looks very cool as I do it like in real time here.
Tell me when it's happened. I won't
No,
start
go ahead,
until
go
it's
ahead.
officially been. Oh, it's gone. Yes.
No, go ahead.
We've
It's-
saw that.
It's very primitive.
Monster wins. A number of monster wins. Creighton last night. The jump shooting Jays. Just a fun one. Very vintage Omaha shooting game for the Jays. Just knocking off UConn. Their first ever win over a number 1 ranked team. Good for them. Just kind of solidifying that this team is maybe more real than some had started to posit in the social media airwaves. I was glad to see it personally, Jim. And then UConn beating Marquette the game before is a little bit stale at this point now. But that is, as Shirley Donovan talked about, it's college basketball in today's day and age. You can win by 30 one day and lose by 30 the next. Just doesn't really make any sense, except it makes total sense because they're kids and they're human and things happen randomly in 40-minute samples. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Creighton was up huge. They shot the lights out early. Ashworth was splashing from deep. Somebody said Splashworth in my mentions. And I was like, how have I never put that together? Always wanted him to grow a mustache and be Stashworth, Stephen Ashworth, but unfortunately he never did that. Alexander was good. Kalkbrenner was terrific. They got contributions from Farabello. Jason Green out of nowhere. Hello. I do think this is what you can get from Creighton, like the one game holy crap performance, but then you have the duds where you put up sub 50 against Colorado State, at UConn, and that's why it's going to be tough to win 6 because they're so reliant on jump shooting. They're going to have to be able to consistently generate and hit good shots over the course of a whole tournament, but it's fun to see that outlier outcome happen. And Kai, I know you have a 3-man thought about UConn, so I won't make you go into it in depth, but they also blew up Marquette. So I don't really think too much less of UConn. In fact, getting it down to 10 late was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'll talk about the UConn thing a little bit later in 3-man thoughts, Matt. I won't step on my own toes, but yeah, Ashworth, woo, he went off, man. Hit shots from everywhere. Loved it.
Yeah, I'd say just because of the timing of our podcast, they buried the Purdue loss to Ohio State in the almost too predictable circle the wagons game for Ohio State. After Chris Holtman gets fired, Jake Diebler steps into the interim helm, and lo and behold, the Buckeyes rise and knock off the Purdue Boilers there in Columbus, Mr. McKeon. Who's more overrated, Purdue or Connecticut? I want your thoughts, please.
Everyone's overrated. Kidding me? No team's good in college basketball this year. Had some guy tell me that skill was down across the country this year, and that's why Houston's the best team. Okay. Yeah.
Literally none
I'll
of the
figure that
data
one out.
backs that up in terms of efficiency, free throw shooting, taking care of the ball, etc. Like it's very indicative that skill is up.
Yeah.
Matt, quick stat from that game. Purdue only took 9 threes. I saw a stat that non-ED players took 33 twos. Kind of an alarming
Yeah.
way that the game played out for them. That's not really what you want out of Purdue. And maybe credit to Jake Diva for a solid defensive game plan to take all that stuff away.
This one snuck under the radar for me because it's on a Sunday, and I just feel like some of these, like the Big Ten Friday Sunday scheduling, the AACs don't doing this too. I think you can argue you get more of the limelight, but also people seem to talk about it less within the college basketball zeitgeist on Sundays. So yeah, Jim, a lot more emerged as funky as I look closer at that box score. I didn't watch any of that game, to be honest. So I think it's a one-game fluke, right? Just for both sides.
I hope so, but I don't like that Fletcher Lawyer's taken 5 threes in 4 games and has hit one of them. Potentially a February swoon for Mr. Lawyer. They need him. I mean, look how good he was against Arizona in that neutral site game. He had that one monster game against Tennessee back in Maui. They need a little bit more from him to win the biggest games, and he just wasn't there. Didn't really show up in Columbus, unfortunately.
Kentucky goes into the jungle and knocks off Auburn, I think, at a game when everyone thought that Kentucky was, put a fork in them, they were toast, and Auburn hadn't lost by less than 15 in forever at home. And sure enough, Kentucky goes into the hostile arena and wins by 11. Cal was a delight in his post-game pressers, sort of doing the patronizing self-deprecation stuff that he likes to do. It was weird. Cal's funny, though. He can tell he harbors so much of the criticism because when he finally has leverage to punch back, he does it in like this kind of petty, but also funny and endearing. It's very confusing. I never quite can keep up with what he's saying or where he's going with his points. But anyway, they beat Auburn. They play good defense, Kai. That's the story. Kentucky playing defense. Imagine if Big Blue Nation plays a lick of defense. That's a good basketball team.
So the Calipari stuff in the presser, like I caught some of it. I don't understand who he was talking to. It was like, I was in the huddle and I said, "Hey guys, we're gonna go zone." And he was like, "But they said, Coach, we just got 9 stops in a row. Why would we go zone?" He goes, "Trust me, let's go zone for a couple possessions." That's what he was saying in the press conference. No one even I don't understand who he's talking to in this. Is he talking to his assistant coaches or his players, like giving him guff? And I don't even know who he's talking to, Jim.
That's the Big J thing of asking yourself a question.
The reason?
Why did we go zone defense? Well, no one asked it, but all right. Okay. We got it. That was a little mystifying. I'm pumping the brakes on Kentucky's defense, fellas. Not really buying it. Both Ole Miss and Auburn were horrendous from deep, combined 9 for 44, 20.5%. Kai, this is what happened with UNC. 2 good or 3 straight road performances where no one made threes against them in ACC play, and everybody christened their defense the best thing of all time. Well, regression is coming. It's not going to, no, people aren't going to shoot 20% from 3 against you every single game. Auburn was just horrible knocking down jump shots. The weird thing for me was Auburn slowing the game down, like actively trying to walk the ball up the floor. It was like they were legitimately scared of Kentucky's transition attack when Auburn is just as good there. That was odd to me. But hey, Kentucky got it done in a half-court game. It should be encouraging for fans of Big Blue Nation that at least they did score and get enough stops to win a game like that, a slow-mo one in a road environment.
Speaking of defense and a team that doesn't really have any concerns on that end of the floor, Houston beating Iowa State's Mr. McKee, and Kelvin Sampson almost got emotional talking about his point guard, what he calls is the best point guard in the country, Jamal Shed. Phenomenal game to knock off what looked like a near invincible juggernaut Cyclone bunch. And in South Florida, I don't really want to talk about this very long because it hurts my soul, knocking off FAU. The Owls almost came back and won that game on Sunday. Just 2 other notable results from the weekend. Any thoughts on those 2?
Come on, FAU. What are we doing? South Florida.
Yeah.
Really good team. Man, Amir Durahim, what can you say after winning the A-Sun with Kennesaw in that fashion and now maybe winning the American? That guy's going to be at Florida State in a couple of years or maybe next year. Fantastic coach. Shooting regression will come for the Bulls, I think, Matt. Uneven scheduling will come for the Bulls, or it won't this year, but that's a big reason why as well. But impressive still, nonetheless.
South Florida has won American games by 4, 4, 3, 5, 6, 4, 1, lost by 4, won by 8. Like they've had a lot of single digit stuff that's gone their way. to only have lost one of those games that came down to it close is, pretty solid. Don't have to go to FAU, don't have to host Memphis. Now they've got the at Charlotte game coming up. I believe they only play SMU once. So to Kai's point, you could argue that 3 of the top 4 teams are only playing once. Hey, you got to take advantage, and they're at least doing that.
Yeah, they've also won a lot. I was on the road, so I'll give them some credit there. I just think it's a good team. They're probably a little bit overhyped at this point, but it's a good team, and I'll say it again, it's a really good conference.
SMU,
we're going to learn
Memphis, SMU, Memphis, FAU, North Texas. They're all playing once. Unbalanced schedules are
that's tough.
Can be very beneficial.
And tough places to play. I mean, North Texas, the Super Pit's it's impossible to win there. So, again, I still think that's going to be like last year's Conference USA, where we're going to look back and say, wow, that was a really good league on April 5th or something. Individual performances, we're a team here, but we do like to shine light on great heroes as they emerge. Blake Hinson made Louisville's defense look like a joke, because it mostly is. Kenny Payne struggled to make the proper adjustments as Mr. Hudson, who I love, by the way, kind of one of the elder statesmen into – he tricked me. The elder statesmen, the adults in the room. Great career, great college career. Had 41 against the Cardinals, 0 assists. So, not a ton of adjusting going on for not making the guy with 40 give up the ball, Kenny.
6 assists in 15 games for Hinson. I love that. This guy just gets buckets.
And he's like his teammates love him. Like Capel waxes poetic about him. So anyway, that aside, Tommy Bruner, shouts to Mr. Bruner for Denver, had a 40 burger. This summit is completely drunk. I appreciated this because I had a Denver -2 ticket. So I celebrated this effort from Mr. Bruner in the second half at altitude. A couple of other notes. Justin Porter, Middle Tennessee, had 41-7 and 3. Also turned it over 10 times against UTEP's pressure.
Double.
Triple-double.
Mixing
Triple-double.
those
Double-double. Yeah.
Double.
Oh, that's right. You count that. Yeah. And then Mississippi Valley State's Raekwon Brown, he needs to transfer. Mississippi Valley State officially is eliminated from SWAC conference contention, so their season is effectively done. But Raekwon Brown, had 38 at Alabama A&M. The rest of his team had 19. That's an imbalanced scoring attack, and that's a recipe to lose by 23 as they did. George Ivory was a little more feisty with the boys last year, and I thought they could be kind of feisty this year in a weird way, but it's tough to be the clear cellar dweller in a league that's already kind of near the bottom of the totem pole. I'll go to you for a thought.
Well, yeah, I agree. I just wanted to add one thing here. Stu Durando, St. Louis writer, journalist, whatever, he was saying how SLU has allowed guards to score 20-plus points 13 times this year in A10 play, and they've played 13 games. So I think that's pretty funny. Just another stat here into individual performances, and related to Kenny Payne not being able to stop Blake Hinson. Just crossed my mind.
Hey, attaboy. Mr. Durando, good writer.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. One of the great locals. We should shout out one local beat reporter show to continue to speak into existence the importance of their role in our.
I love that as an off-season segment, like 5-minute spotlight on great beat writer.
And maybe that'll inspire the shitty ones that drive me off the wall. Anyway, next subsection, I should say, of Weave saw that triple doubles. There were none this week, unless you want to count Justin Porter's 41. Oh yeah, 7 and 10, so still double. Anyway, some bad losses. Yeah, Virginia and Pitt. The ACC is weird. This is sort of what we said last episode. It's just it's a tough league to learn anything new about these teams at this point. You put yourself in the black box that is this weird conference. UVA losing by 34 at Virginia Tech after beating Wake by 2 points the game before, in which they shot 1 of 11 from the free throw line. And then Pitt lost by 33 to Wake Forest last night after going on a 6-game road or win streak before and had been one of the better road teams in the conference all year. So again, ACC, do you have any, Jim? It is what it is at this point. I'm not going to overreact to any game at this point. I can't. I won't.
Yeah, I've got a little thought on Wake Forest in 3-man thoughts, so I'm not going to go into too much depth here, but this felt like a death knell in the Pitt climbing back into the bubble conversation, because just obviously bad look for eye test, terrible for metrics, and they needed a lot of wins down the stretch and did not get one here. So not sure they can quite get there. Jeff Capel did his I hate when the ACC gets disrespect rant in the post-game presser.
Good.
Respect is earned, not given, my man. And I'm not sure the ACC has fully earned it. So,
Right.
Jordan Majewski made a great. Yeah, he's been on fire recently on Twitter. Jordan Majewski has just a quick shout to him, but he had a good point about Buzz. Like, oh, this is a perfect setup to Buzz's annual bracket case, where he gets up and talks about why his team deserves to get in and just slices every metric to his
speaking
favor.
of, Texas A&M. Yes,
Texas
speaking of
A&M. Q3 loss again to Arkansas. It's just tough that in this day and age, when you have to play Arkansas at home, that's a Q3 loss. Like, obviously that team's been terrible, but they can play like a Q1 team. We've seen them play like a Q1 team. They beat Duke at home, whatever you think of Duke. But yeah, still can't lose those games, especially the one in the wake of the Vandy loss at home. That was the bad one. The game they should have won, to drop it at home to Vandy, who's looking like a complete.
It was
right
at
now.
Vandy, at least.
So that was at Vandy. You're right. So not as bad there, but still. Talk about feast or famine, Kai. That'll be the toughest bracketology case, I think, all of the year, right?
Yeah, it's like 6 Q1 wins and 5 Q3 losses. It's pretty bizarre. Fun bracketing exercise.
Yep. Another team we'll discuss in depth in Three-Man Thoughts.
There you go.
And just a few sleepy mid-major slip-ups, I'm calling these. UNC Wilmington, kind of the darling, or one of the darlings in the very good Coastal, losing at home to Elon? What? Billy Taylor and the boys going in there to Trask, getting a win.
All these are double-digit
Shocking.
favorites. Some of these 15+. Like, they were 16.5-point favorites. Like, I'm mad. I cannot explain this one at all. Trask. Who wins at Trask? Elon?
I actually listened to a bit of the UNC Wilmington Perch podcast. Really good coverage, by the way, of UNC Wilmington. Anyway, they were just like, yeah, the zone was weird, and TK Simpkins and McKinnon were just like awesome. So I feel like everyone there was just as shocked as how good those guys were. But they're not that good. It's still Elon. You're at home. Win. Morehead State lost at home to Southern Indiana. This was actually the most surprising. Morehead State has been treating this conference, the OVC, like a bunch of, like a pinata the last few years. So to lose 3 in a row, the last of which coming against a bad team, it doesn't make any sense to me. I can't explain that either. Samford losing at Mercer as a 10-point favorite makes sense to me because they're not at home and Mercer's kind of had their number, but still a pretty shocking result in terms of, the spread expectations. And Samford's been, a juggernaut for most of the year. And then High Point, the mid-major, the low major, mid-major, whatever you want to call them. I feel like they're a mid-major because of how well they're funded and how well that program is supported. They lost at home to USC Upstate, and now they are tied atop that conference, the Big South Conference, with UNC Asheville, who everyone thought preseason was the best team, led by Drew Pember, the pony-tailed stud, former Tennessee transfer. So that's actually of all the low major leagues, Jim, that I don't really keep tabs on as the season gets longer. That conference tournament, the Bojangles, the Big South Bojangles showdown, UNC Asheville, High Point. If we get a collision course between those two, that'll be good.
Yeah, would happily take it. I have some interest in these conferences in terms of futures. I won't disclose all my positions or anything. I won't bore people with that, but a lot of eyebrow raisers, Kai, that some helped, some hurt. I just was shocked. I mean, Morehead State is like stunning to me. They got Latham back last night and lost as 15.5-point favorites. What's going on?
Makes no sense, Jim. March is mad, and it's not even March, Matt. Not even March.
Still February per the title of this video.
Still February. Matthew.
And the podcast, too. Probably our worst named podcast of our 362 episodes, 342 episodes to date. So congratulations to those of you tuning in. You had the pleasure of listening to a poorly named episode. And now it's time for 3-Men Thoughts. But first, a word from our fine sponsor.
You do it.
Do we need it? I'll do it? Yeah, I'll do it. Wow, great hockey pass back to me. Yes, today's show, as it always is sponsored by Homefield. Homefield makes premium collegiate apparel for schools of all sizes, from Power 5 down to D3, because they dig through all the archives to understand each of the schools and the fan base to find those awesome vintage logos. They don't just say school name across the chest, but actually bring out the character of each program. They print these designs. They bring these designs to life and print them on those comfortable tees. Yes, they are very comfortable wearing a Homefield sweatpant right now.
Ooh.
You'll have our own, right out of their own office, located in the heartland of hoops. That's Indiana, where I went to school. I know my Indiana brethren are all in on the Homefield relationship there. Go to Homefield Apparel. That's APPAREL.com, Homefield.com, to shop your school. And if you don't have your school, just tweet at them. Let them know, hey, you don't have our school, and they will oblige you, or at least get to work on doing that research. Get 50% off the most comfortable collegiate apparel you'll ever own by going to that exact website. It's homefieldapparel.com using the code 3MW. 3MW gets you 15% off. Courtesy of us, you're welcome in advance. That's Homefield. Wear one for the team.
Perfect.
Matt's best
Three-man
ad read
thoughts.
of all time.
Perfect.
Right there.
I think I read the second
No
line
notes.
before the third or the fourth before the first, but no, I mean, Homefield loves us and we love them, so it's all good. I have a long thought, not really a long thought, but a well-involved thought. I'd like to kick it, like to defer. So unlike the 49ers, I will defer, Jim.
I'll
Nice.
go. Yeah,
Topical.
cool.
Good.
There you go. Attaboy. I'm going to combine kind of two thoughts into one here, and it's really just a general bubble discussion. Just sort of inspired by Sam Vecini's little Twitter thread about Wake Forest and how we need to do away with the quadrant system, or we're overthinking it. We should just put good teams in the tournament. Kai, there's some nuance to that. Like, you know, I agree. Wake Forest is awesome. They're top 25 in pretty much every predictive metric. They've blown out like everybody they're supposed to beat. They're smashing them, especially recently. They had that big Pitt win. But the one quadrant one win, like if you hate quadrants, fine, get rid of that. But they're not beating anybody above them. And you have to do that. You are who you beat. To get into the tournament, like it's about accomplishments. It's about resume. And whether you want to go to wins above bubble, which is a metric I am extremely partial to because every game has a value. They're like 61st in the country. They're negative 0.1. They're slightly worse than a bubble team based on results. And I just don't want this to turn into college football where we're just like, well, I thought Alabama was better than Florida State, and the games suddenly matter a little less, Kai. So this is kind of a rant from me, kind of a, look, I want Wake Forest in, but they need to earn it kind of thing. And it's sort of a, what do we want to do with this process? What do you think of a team like Wake? I know you have thoughts on bracketology and all of this.
Yeah, I mean, no offense to Sam, who we love and our buddy, but I thought this tweet was asinine. I mean, you just watched Wake play their best game of the year. They won by 30, and you said, this team should absolutely be in the dance. I just saw them play well. Did you watch the Virginia game when they scored 47 points and lost? Did you watch the earlier games? They lost to Florida State, at Pitt, beat nobody the entire season.
At UNC, completely ran off the floor.
I mean, Wake's great. I love this team as well, but the resume is the resume. Like, the quads are based off the resume, right? It's like, go to the quadrant system and look at the resume. Look at the resume. Who have they beaten? And the quadrant system is not perfect, but it's something objective that we need. Otherwise, put teams in based off KenPom. Put teams in based off the betting market.
Yeah,
those are the best teams in the country, truly. But you have to base it off resume and who someone's beaten. Otherwise, it means nothing.
Yep. Games got to matter. That phrase got beaten to the ground during the college football playoff discussion, but it's relevant and it matters. And figuring out what to do with Wake. Look, maybe once they get in, you can seed them higher. If you want to adjust some of that based on predictive, so they're not stuck, you know, some 6 seed isn't an underdog to them in the first round. Fine, cool with me. But they've got to do enough to get in. And as of now, they simply haven't by like any objective metric of accomplishment, resume metric, wins above bubble, quadrant one wins, etc. They've got to get there. And Gonzaga's kind of in this same boat. But Matt, on the other end of the spectrum, in terms of bubble teams, is Texas A&M, the team we were talking about earlier. They've got all these great wins, 6 Q1 wins, but then now it's 4 quadrant 3 wins because quadrant 3 losses, because losing at Arkansas became quad 2 because they lost to Arkansas at home, like weirdly flipped their own result in there. But like, what kind of bubble team do you prefer, Matt? Do you want the one that we know objectively is good based on metrics and predictive stuff, or do you want the one that has been able to rise up and can beat anybody on any given day or lose to anyone on any given day? What is more intriguing to you as a team type?
I think I want a little more consistency. I don't know, though. I guess I skew more towards have you proven you can beat tournament caliber teams, but in those games, do you have a winning record? You know what I mean? So like, I say that with you start by saying, I prefer teams that have proven they can beat tournament caliber teams. However, if you say that ignores the record. And my biggest pet peeve is when we ignore the record against those teams, because that's when you start getting the skew toward the power conference teams that aren't really that good. And I think you're undervaluing or considering teams who haven't had the opportunities against those teams, and also the magnitude in which teams have beaten solid to bad teams, which I still think matters to a degree. So I don't know.
Yeah, you're talking
I'm torn on this, Jim. My whole thought is actually sort of a road versus home breakdown of this sort of, segmenting or categorizing these types of bubble teams. I don't know. I'm torn. I think I just move the goalpost in favor of which team I like that in that given year. So I'm not a good person.
Yeah, historically, the committee has favored teams that beat good teams, right? So I think A&M is most likely okay. But look at it, KenPom perspective. Wake has beaten 0 teams in the top 50 of KenPom. A&M's beaten 5 top 40 teams in KenPom. It's a huge difference.
And Wake, I think, is interesting because they're playing like they are now after they got Reed, as Shin talked about, and it's they probably would have beaten one of those good teams had they played in the non-con if they had their full. So I don't know. I think every team has its own story, right? So you kind of have, this is where the bracketing thing is so hard. And when you get to like the
it's never gonna be perfect.
seed and 9 seed and 10 seed, you really have to go through this kind of stuff. Like you can't just be a blind resume, robot. You kind of have to understand the context, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things I hate, and they're kind of doing it in the chat a little bit right now, is I hate what's the record versus projected field. I think it is stupid and is so unnuanced as to be useless. If you played 3 shaky bubble teams at home and beat them all, oh, you're 3-0 against projected field. Way to go. Or did you play 5 really good teams, 4 of them on the road? Oh, you're only 1-4 against projected field. That's the point of the quadrant system. Each game is difficult or easier, whether based on venue, the team. Quadrant's not perfect. Again, this is why I love wins above bubble, because each game has a value. Like a road game against a great team is different from a home game against a good team, etc. It's just, we have a hard time capturing all of that data based on eye test and just glancing at a team sheet. Some sort of all-encompassing measurement does a much better job of it. This is such a roundabout. We're never going to solve bubble discussions here, but I do think having that kind of nuance of location and the difficulty of the game matters. You can't just watch a team and decide they're in. That's ultimately the point.
Right, exactly. And you're not watching every other team, right? It's just the fallacy of the eye test. In the chat we're talking Dayton a little bit too. Dayton and Wake would be about a pick right now on neutral, on a neutral floor. But Dayton's a 4 or a 5 seed and Wake is on the bubble. And that comes down to the actual resume, who they've beaten and who they've lost to this season. And I think that's okay. That's just
ton
the
of
difference
value
in
and
the system.
continuity, right? I think you see like the value of retaining players is pretty huge because in the non-con, that's when you have the opportunity to really prove your worth. Look at FAU, look at Dayton, right? Brought back all of their nucleus. They got big wins in the non-con. They've hit a few bumps in conference, but like mostly they're going to be in a good position come tournament. Where at Wake, they lose 3 of their first 5, play really good teams, brand new, largely a pretty seismic change in roster for Steve Forbes. And they're kind of suffering from a lot of the same stuff that like these mid majors are, right? So it's the way the season is set up with non-con into conference. It's hard to be good right away, and you're rewarded for being good right away. But the timing and the evolution of your team is where the nuance comes in. That's just largely ignored, I think, in these types of things. I am with Sam on the general. Like at the end of the day, you have to sit back and say, who do you think is the best team? But it has to be justifiable by the book, as long as the book is interpreted correctly. And I don't like when it's not on a record base and just like that team beat 6 good teams and that team only beat 2. It's like, okay, well, great. Good for freaking Rutgers.
Basically,
Sorry, I like Rutgers. Bad example.
It kind of, to Dave in the chat, he's saying like Dayton's best win is Cincinnati in a semi-away game. But if beating Cincinnati in a semi-away game is as hard as beating Wisconsin at home, like, why are we differentiating? Like the venue matters, the difficulty of the game matters, not the, if you're doing it based on just who you beat in the field, every team will only play home games. Like they're just like, I only want to play at home because it's easier and I'm not going to get punished for not playing on the road. So there's got to be a lot. All right. This has been a long rant.
No, one more point. I'm not done.
I'm
not done. One more point. I think another, kind of tangent of this is like, look at Texas. So Texas right now is 6-7 in the Big 12. Okay. They're 17-9 overall. I don't know what their metrics are. They're sitting like around an 8 or 9 seed, I think, in bracket matrix. I don't know where you bracketologist gurus have them, but I think there's like this dumb perception by the people, the front runner power broker people who think Texas would go like 12-0 or 10-1 in the AAC right now. It's like, no, they wouldn't. I think that's what people don't understand. They always look at like these teams that rack up gaudy conference records that go 16-2, like James Madison or Indiana State, that they would, go sub 500 for sure in the big bad boy conferences. I don't agree with that, and I think you have to skin that cat. Sorry, not to get too violent. Skin that cat the exact same way the other way. You put Texas, you put some of these really good but sort of middling, big time power conference teams in like a high major Sun Belt or Valley or whatever. They would not do as well as you think they would. I assure you of that. And so that's where I think the skew and the bias of some of this stuff bothers me. And that's, I think, didn't Sam bring it up in his thread, like, the main concern was like the power broker consolidation of power and how it just continues to force teams at the margin, the mid majors, the margin out the door. That's what we don't want.
It's hard. That's one of the biggest fixes that college basketball could use is the schedules are that just kind of try to even this stuff out, make big teams play road games, will allow mid-major teams to have home chances against these teams, etc. All right. That's it. Which one of you wants to take it, Matt? You said your thought was long too. I know mine was just about a 10-minute rant, so sorry.
So mine, I looked at, and there's a more scientific way to do this. I wanted to look at the home versus road splits of a lot of these, teams on bubble, but also just teams at the top of the bracket right now. In a year when home court advantage feels like it means a crap ton. How many teams' resumes have been boosted by just winning at home and holding serve at home versus what teams have actually gone on the road and like really done some stuff? Because I think that group is what really impresses me, and I'm not sure that's going to translate to tournament success. But I hypothesize that it might, and it also probably makes them slightly disrespected in the bracketology process. So what I did was I looked at team rankings, has like just a basic power rating of home, road, and neutral performance. I don't think there's any, it's just like a relative efficiency performance based on where you play. I think if you used a KenPom home road split or a Haslametric, you probably get something similar. So just a proxy. And also I didn't balance it by number of games at home, road, neutral. So there's some skews here, but I think it gives the general picture of teams that have just been good everywhere, right? And I think some of these teams are maybe undervalued right now and just perception and maybe where they're sitting on the bracket. It's funny to see A&M as the number one team here. What I did was I looked at their overall home ranking and then their overall road/neutral rating and did a relative blend. So basically A&M has been much better away from home. They've been really good on neutral courts, really good road games. They've been bad at home. Dayton sits at number 2 in that, right? They've been very good neutral, away, been good at home, but relatively they've actually been better away from home. And there's only, I count 12 teams that have actually in like the top 50, top 75 that have a better net road neutral rating than at home. So A&M, Dayton, Illinois was the only, Illinois, UConn, and Purdue were the only top 10 power rated teams that made this cut. Kentucky, SMU, Mississippi State, Providence, Duke, Villanova, Clemson, San Diego State, and Gonzaga. So just some teams I think that those have been the most balanced in terms of their performance and not racking up gaudy home resumes.
And you see somebody like Clemson on here that won at Alabama and at UNC, and it's like, yep, this makes sense. I feel like the data backs up what I've seen.
And your theory here, Matt, would be that these teams might be better bets, for instance, in a NCAA tournament setting.
Teams I'd more likely to trust and win yes, which I think there's actually been some analysis that has debunked this, so I could be talking on my ass here. But I think the more important point is that these are teams that I will be upset if they are pushed below. I suspect we'll see one of these teams left out on the bubble, Kai. And I could probably stretch this and expand this to go a little farther, and then I could bring in the home cooking teams, as I call them, the teams that basically won at home. I feel like there's going to be a couple instances where those teams are going to get over this group, and that's going to bother me. So I think in this season, winning on the road has been very impressive. Like St. Mary's, I think, has just missed this cut line. They have been they're 8-0 on the road, I think, this year. Like they've been really good outside of their own building. So I don't know.
We still got to win at home,
kind of
right?
Rant.
Like, why are you losing at home? Why are you not as good at home? You still got to win those games too, and it could be unbalanced schedules, like you said.
I agree. And on the other end of the spectrum, just a few names here to throw out there. I mean, Utah, obviously. I think Wake is an obvious one. Iowa State, Creighton, Maryland. That's they're off the radar.
Is Colorado in there?
Washington State, Colorado,
Mountain West,
Baylor,
besides San Diego State,
and Mountain West. just missed the cut. Actually, some of those Mountain West teams were a little better than I thought on some of their
Hey,
neutrals.
okay.
Yeah, I kind of maybe
Okay.
maybe our Mountain West rant was a little too harsh last episode. But BYU's in there, and our Florida Gators are in there too. Sorry, John and Todd, but they have been awesome at home, like just awesome at home. Anyway, yeah, food for thought.
Great.
I guess I have no takeaway. Just like I'm hoping these teams in this group here don't get screwed by gaudy Q1 records at home. So I think those don't mean as much this year.
Don't worry. The road record is accounted for, or at least it's supposed to be, in the overall resume analysis by the committee,
good.
who's never done anything wrong in their entire lives.
Except including Frank Case Tulsa. That's my only beef with him, Kai.
that
That's
was
the only one. Yeah.
Oh, and that one year when was it Nevada that got in? Nobody had them in the field, or whatever.
like that.
Anyways, hey, I'll take the rock. Let's keep going with like actual team talk. I'll save credential rant at the end. Jim said something that was good and kind of relative to my thought here about overreacting basically to some of these teams that are at the top of the country, we'll say, because Houston is one of those teams that I think people thought, well, once they get to the Big 12, they're not going whatever in the league and winning the conference. Guess what? They're in first place in the Big 12. So what Jim's saying about Texas going down a level to the American is exactly correct. They wouldn't go 16-0, blah, 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 blah in these leagues. Houston's a great team at any level. Unfortunately, and we've talked about it before, all you've heard about Houston in the national media is that they're overrated and that they're only in first in KenPom because they blow out bad teams. And yet here they sit in sole possession of first place in the Big 12. So I was glad, no offense UConn fans, to see UConn finally get blasted off the floor. It was really nice to see because I've heard nothing about besides how this team is head and shoulders above the rest of the country. And the answer is no. You just forgot the last time they lost a game. And they're still really good. They're elite. They're a title contender. They're a 1 seed. But there are other teams on their level. Purdue's got the number 1 strength of schedule in the country per KenPom. Same record. But people don't like Zach Edey all of a sudden. They call him a foul merchant because nobody can physically stop him and he gets to the free throw line. And Edey's suddenly a villain for some reason. I don't know how he became that. Matt, he's all of a sudden like a heel of a pro wrestling thing. And
It's because of all the officiating discussion stuff.
yeah,
That's what it
it's
is.
bizarre. Like I said, Houston, yeah, first place. The gap
Matt,
between
you're muted.
Oh, Matt's muted. Good.
Matt was trying to talk again while muted.
That's fine. Houston, the gap between Houston first place and KenPom versus Purdue number 2, it's nearly the same as Purdue at 2 and Auburn at 5. It's hard to describe how good Houston has been this season. Historically, defensively, it's one of the best seasons ever from a defensive standpoint. Again, comparing years is tough in KenPom, but still, they are dominating on that end of the floor, and that's half the game. I'm sure the AP poll is going to shift again for this recent swoon that UConn just had. If you think they were number 1 a week ago, one game, all of a sudden they're not number 1. It's bizarre. That's the AP poll. But the national title race is as open as I can remember it. And none of these teams are overrated right now. There's a lot of good teams at the top of college basketball.
I was starting to have like panic in my mind of like, wait, is UConn just invincible? And because they are one of the teams not in my futures portfolio, I was like, oh God, do I need to just completely overcompensate and put a ton of money on them to win, cover my bases? And look, they still are probably the most likely team to win the title, even with Houston and Purdue being narrowly ahead of them at KenPom. I'd say maybe UConn's the favorite, but they're not invincible. They're not some team that's going to just completely terrorize the sport. A lot of people saying they might be better than last year's, and that
No,
is crazy
What?
to me.
they're not.
What?
I know last year's team had some Big East foibles, but against anyone not in the Big East, they shellacked them. The run through the tournament was as good as anyone's ever done. I have a hard time seeing this UConn team winning 6 straight games by 15 plus in that tournament.
Yeah, and don't forget last year, UConn non-conference, they didn't not cover a single game. They were historically
Blew away
dominant.
expectations.
Dave's point in the chat, this is good. UConn has blasted 4 sub-300 KenPom teams by 30 plus the non-con. That's never talked about. Only Houston's big wins over bad teams have been talked about, not UConn's. So that's, very good double standard there, Dave. Good point.
Yeah, Houston played 3 teams sub 340, or sorry, sub 335.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the goalposts just move based on what you've done, what people seen you do in the postseason. Like if Houston wins the title, people probably will never say this stuff about them again. Virginia, a lot of stuff went away once they won a title.
Sure did. All right, that's my first thought, guys. Jim, your turn.
All right, my second one's more fun. Guys, we're talking National Coach of the Year. I don't believe we have checked in with this recently. If we have, I apologize.
Dennis Gates.
Well, Kai, that might be the other end of the spectrum, unfortunately. But I'm going to give you some candidates, guys that have stood out, and I'll see what you guys think based on what we've seen so far. I've got these three categories. One is blowing past expectations. One is solid but elite question mark, and one is just elites. You got to mention. We'll start with those. Dan Hurley, Kelvin Sampson. I think you can mention them. Even Matt Painter, if you want to put him up there. Obviously, those teams have pretty high expectations, especially UConn and Purdue, so it's harder for them to win. In the solid but elite group, Hubert Davis, North Carolina, elevated them to like top 10 from mostly top 25 preseason rankings. I would say Nate Oates and Bruce Pearl have done somewhat the same. So really good coaching jobs, but I'm just not sure they're better than this group, the blowing past expectations group. That is Lamont Paris of South Carolina, Kyle Smith, Washington State, TJ Otzelberger of Iowa State. People weren't even sure that was a tournament team coming into the year. And I mean, they're right up there with Houston in the Big 12. Danny Sprinkle, Utah State, have like 12 new scholarship players, and they sit atop the Mountain West. Nico Medved at Colorado State. You had one, the Creighton win in the non-conference and what they've done in league play. Nico Medved, Mark Pope at BYU, Amir Abdur-Rahim at South Florida, and Josh Schertz of Indiana State, though he is fading, unfortunately. Kai, give me two or three that you think are the top of the pile here. I guess I can go first. To me, it's Kyle Smith and Lamont Paris, just for what was thought they could do, what those programs have typically done in the past, and the way they have elevated it beyond that level.
I agree. I prefer the Coach of the Year being an exceeded expectations by a ton award. I don't like giving it to the best team in the country because oftentimes those teams are expected to be there, right? It's like coaching should be a clear or at least pretty clear measure of, hey, your talent is not nearly the level of what your record is. Coaching has to be part of the equation that gets it from that level to what your record actually is. And that's Lamont Paris, I think, is probably my first choice this season, just based on preseason expectations. I think Sampson's a great candidate too, even though Houston was expected to be good. They're still going to win the Big 12, or if they do, he should be considered. Otzelberger at Ohio State, I think, is a good answer too, Jim. I'd probably go Paris and then Otzelberger too right now.
Okay. All right. Respect to Otz, Matt. Not Oates, Otz.
Otz.
Coach Otz. I know I say Oates. Just I like Oates. Honey Oats cereal. I haven't honey Oats cereal in a while.
But there is an Oats. That's why I put my foot down. If there wasn't an Oats, I'd let you do it.
I actually think Otz is my choice here. As crazy as that, I do think this roster was perceived to be definitely a step down from last year, and it was a younger team. It was a team that probably shouldn't have succeeded as well as it had. And I know they kind of got the same UConn flack, like played nobody in non-con, ran up their efficiency, but like now they're at 9-4 in the Big 12. They've beaten TCU at TCU, Texas at Texas, Cincy at Cincy. Maybe I'm reaching here because they haven't been as good away from home as I just made my whole home versus road performance rant, but I mean, they've just been way, way better than I thought they'd be. And I just think that maybe I'm giving this like a multi-year coach award type of credit here, but I think Otz has been really good, like just awesome. And maybe I'm also giving him too much credit because he hasn't gotten sterling recruits, and that's part of the process, but I'm throwing Otz in there.
What's the...
Sorry, Sprinkle. Close, but I'm going Otz.
What's the lowest level of conference a coach has won the National Player of the Year? Do we know this?
Oh, man.
Did Anthony Grant win it at Dayton for the Dayton run in the COVID year?
Probably should have. I hope he did.
Because, I mean, I love Abdur-Rahim. He's not going to win it. I mean, no one cares about South Florida. I love Danny Sprinkle. I don't think he's going to win it because no one cares about Utah State.
Maybe Dutcher was right there with him that year, Kai, because San Diego State was so good, and they were Mountain West. So, or maybe they just gave it to Bill Self because Kansas kicked the butt again.
Yeah, right.
I'll look it up. I'll report back during Matthias's second thought.
Yeah.
There aren't as many great power conference candidates this year. I'll say that. You guys agree with that? Not that
unless you just want to go the elite route
in front of me, but
unless you want to go the elite route.
I think it'd be cool if this year, if you gave it to Sprinkle or Rahim or Schertz, especially. I think this is a year I'd like to see one of those guys get it. Just my personal opinion.
All right, Matt. What's your second thought?
I only have one thought.
Good.
Wow.
One thought.
Hey,
gosh, do your homework.
That's perfect
kid.
for this pod, though, because we ran long in other areas.
Yeah, I knew we'd run long. We're always run too long. I'm trying to go to one thought of the show. One good thought, quality thought.
Okay, I'll go. Credential-Gate. Here I go. I wanted to just talk about this on our own platform because it's just been in writing right now and tweeting, and it's hard to get across tones and what you mean in certain tweets. So Georgetown, I'm a little bit over this right now, but I still think I want to discuss it. So I was denied a credential at Georgetown initially by the SID of Georgetown. I was upset about this because in our history as three-man weave, this has only happened one other time. That was at USC when Matt's preview disagreed with the SID's opinion of Andy Enfield's performance to that
And I
date.
stand by it. Hey,
Yeah.
Andy, don't blow a 16-point lead with 8 minutes to go against freaking
Yeah.
Colorado, you loser, this Saturday.
This was also like 2017, so we were really like pretty early on in our adventure anyways. So I understood it a little bit more, but this one rubbed me the wrong way. So I tweeted about it. A media member behind the scenes without our knowledge contacted Ed Cooley. Ed Cooley got us credentials and almost courtside seats behind the bench. So fantastic from Cooley. Thank you so much. Would the media member not have contacted Cooley and Cooley not called the SID, we would not have gotten credentials. So I still feel good about this call out.
Kai, does this mean we're going to carry water for Cooley
standby.
forever now?
Maybe.
Are we going to be?
But we were DM'd by a couple smaller blogs, not just one, a couple, saying like this is a normal thing at Georgetown. They are denied credentials. These blogs that talk about exclusively Georgetown denied because they're smaller and not big websites, and I think that's ridiculous. It's gatekeeping, egotism. There's plenty of room on press row. They had seats open there. I didn't dox this person by putting her name on Twitter. You can Google Georgetown SID. It's the first thing that comes up on Google. No phone numbers, anything were in there. So keyboard warriors, calm down. In summary, credential process. Yeah, it didn't work out great at Georgetown. We got it done. I'm glad Cooley stepped in. Thank you so much. Maryland was no problem. We got credentials right away. So thank you to the Terps.
And
Yeah,
Scott
I
Van
do think-
Pelt got those for us, right? That was
Scott
SID.
Van Pelt.
Okay.
He was the unnamed media member at Maryland. Yeah, I do think this should just be inclusive. Like, what's the
inclusive.
downside of people that want to talk about your team? I don't know.
None.
It just surprises me when it is gate kept the way that was. Kai, agreed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come on, man. Let people in. Don't gatekeep. Ridiculous. You're not big enough to cover our sport.
All right. Yeah,
This isn't the John.
college basketball is
maybe under
overflowing
JT3.
with so much media attention. Yeah. All right.
Under the JT3 era, I would have been fine with that, Kai, but this is a new dawn. A new
Yeah,
day in
Georgetown
Holy hoop.
almost dead last in the Big East too. That was another point. Okay, ran over. I said kind of what I wanted to say. So are we done with three-man thoughts here?
We are. It's
All right.
previews, and that
Matthew.
gives the ball back to Matthew as he reclines in his chair.
I don't like. I need a new kitchen chair here. There's no action Friday, no good action. But Saturday, a lot of good games. Alabama at Kentucky is I would say the best on the board. I think. Yeah, I did my little fan match scroll today. It's the best on the board. Gonna be an awesome game. Gonna be a lot of points. Tonight we have Alabama, Florida, the highest total of the year, I believe, at 175 points. Alabama, Kentucky, 180 is the projection.
I can't remember
telling-
what Iowa UMBC was. That was
UMBC, it's
super
right. I feel like there's a
high.
UMBC game that was higher than this. But,
Yeah.
It was close to this, but 180 might be the record, I think, for
the
projection.
point being, Alabama at Kentucky will likely be 95 to 85. And it'll just be like a normal expected outcome for the game. So it'll be fun if you like points. Most people do. The big thing I think in this one is Kentucky defense that they showed at Auburn. Is it sustainable? Is it just a one game blip on the radar? Or did some zone, as Coach Cal said, not even we know what we're doing in the zone. So how can her opponent know what we're doing? As sort of
Hilarious.
sort of an effective approach to defense. I kind of like it. I can see it working for a few game stretch here where they, other teams are like, what are they doing? And then maybe there's some scouting that comes out. But Jim, I think the Big Blue Nation rolls here at home against Bama, who has been rolling the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I kind of buy it with Kentucky. I think if they're getting a letdown performance, it could be tonight against LSU. I wrote that up for Action Network, and I took LSU. Maybe that's a spinny home dog, whatever. I don't care.
I'm on Bayou Bengals with you, Jimbo.
That a boy, and I know how much you love Matt McMahon, so that's actually
Maddie
surprising
McMahon, you
wager
don't.
out of you. No, I'm with you. I think we see Kentucky continue to get a little bit more right at home at Rupp. I do hope Trey Mitchell is back. That shoulder thing is lingering, and I think they're a better team with him on the court, even if the on-off isn't like emphatically saying that so far. But if they want to get better on defense, they can't play Big Z. Kai, the limited sample is already revealing how horrific of a defender he is. They need him on the floor, but they're playing more Reed Shepherd. They have DJ Wagner back, who's their best perimeter defender. I'm going to say Kentucky gets that big one at home against Rupp, or at home at Rupp against Bama.
I think so too. I think they get it done as well. I haven't been super like Alabama's wins in conference play are not like incredible. I know they're 10-2 in the league, but you look at some of these games like, yeah, okay, you're kind of supposed to win that one. You're supposed to win that one. I think Kentucky is a step up along with the Auburns of the world. They split with Auburn. They lost by 20 to Tennessee. Those are really the only elite teams they've played in the SEC. Kentucky's going to be the third. I don't know if you call Florida elite quite yet tonight, but I do think Kentucky gets it done.
Yeah, like Vandy by 3 on the road. They've been different on the road. Definitely a different team.
Houston goes to Baylor. The Bears have been playing better basketball too. It seems like they have been flying under the radar in the Big 12 this season. Just a team that needs an extra body. It seems like they're light on depth. Langston Love's been out. Kai, I feel like they're a guard short. As good as they played, I do feel like they're a guard short. They're not as fun or as high scoring as we saw in the non-conference. Playing a lot more zone. And Mr. Misi up front is not just like a shot blocker, but he looks kind of skilled. Kind of like raise my eyebrow every time I see Baylor on the tele. I think they're pretty good, but this is a big boy. Put your big boy pants on when Houston comes to town. But Baylor's at home, Kai. So what gives?
I still love Houston, my Cougs. I haven't really looked in this one too in depth. I just am in love with this Houston team. I'm rooting for them too as a biased observer because I want them to succeed because I'm tired of the overrated talks that we talked about in 3-Man Thoughts. But their defense is elite. And guess what? They can score too. And yeah, a lot of it is offensive rebounding, just taking care of the ball. That's part of basketball. So I think Houston scores against Baylor. I think Baylor has a really tough time scoring against Houston. I lean towards the Cougars.
Yeah, Kai, you mentioned the offensive rebounding. BYU just had 16 offensive rebounds against Baylor, 41% of their misses. If you're having trouble against on the glass against BYU, who's not crazy physical, then look out against Houston. It is nice for Baylor to be back home after going West Virginia to BYU to Provo. Now back home, you get to be in Waco. And we did have the stat earlier that these top 4 teams are 56-1 at home in the season overall, not just league play. But I think this is one where people have to open their eyes a little bit on Houston and be like, oh, okay. Though they won at Baylor, they're now very clearly atop the league. That these Cougars are legit.
Yeah, I mean, I think Baylor's legit though too. I mean, Jim, you mentioned this last thought. And fun game here for those who've not seen the new Baylor Arena, Foster Pavilion.
Really cool.
Not great to watch on TV. I wish the camera angle wasn't like from the bird's eye view, but
I've been starting to maybe put together a list on that. Like Indiana State's camera's too high. Baylor's camera is too high. That's important. Like I think Boise State camera's too high. Like your camera perch needs to not be in the rafters.
Even South Florida, I think England was a little too high and like and unstable too. Get that fixed. It's hard to watch. Like we're trying to hype up your arena, but if I can't watch a game from my couch and enjoy it, it's hard for me to put all my chips in and endorse your arena. But still, very intimate venue. Should be a rocking crowd there when Houston comes to town. Speaking of, on Tobacco Road, Jim, Wake Forest hosting my Duke Blue Devils. Wake's been awesome at home. Now, it's obviously not a very long trip just to bus ride down for the Devils, but it just seems like when they're on the parquet floor there at Wake, they have been a different team, up to 21 in KenPom after taking Pitt to the woodshed. Rematch, quick turnaround from the Duke Hamilton, mostly in the first game. Jared McCain is a star. That's sort of the subplot of this Duke mid-conference uptick.
First round pick.
Yeah, he had would he have 28 in the first half against Florida State? It was absurd. He was going absolutely nuts.
He was supposed to be the multi-year stay for a while program builder, and now he's just so goddamn good that there's no reason for him to stay very long. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Oh, I feel so bad for Duke
I know,
fans,
it's
man.
tough.
One of these days, Duke will get a break to go their way.
Cooper's
One
going
of
to
these
stay 4
days.
years.
Wake Forest wins this game. Maybe shuts up the entire discussion we had about Wake Forest earlier. It's only one Q1 home game against Duke, but it will matter to people to see that on the list. And Matt, I do think Duke might still have some of the rocky road issues that were covered up by Florida State's own problems. So yeah, I think the Duke's winning.
I think Wake Forest wins this one as well. I had a whole spot argument thing on Twitter. Not argument, just like discussing spots and how, if they matter in the market and stuff like that. But ultimate quote unquote spot here, if you're into that sort of thing for Wake. Yes, much better team at home. These teams did just play on the 12th. Wake never led in that game, but they were really competitive. They were with Duke the entire way at Cameron. So I think they can win this game, compete. I like Wake here as well.
I agree. That's a sweep. I think Wake wins this game. Yeah, with some very serious ACC title implications. Speaking of, North Carolina goes to Virginia. John Paul Jones. I can't say John Paul Jones. JPJ will be rocking for this one up in Charlottesville. But Virginia, like, what is Virginia? Who are Virginia? How is Virginia, Kai? Can they score? No. Can they defend? Usually, you think against UNC, they'd probably have a spirited effort. But historically, UNC has been a pretty big kryptonite. Jim, I think you have some data on this in the head-to-head, but UNC's done pretty well against UVA. I just feel like the talent and the shot making they've had historically has been a pretty good a counter to the pack line.
I'll have the data for the best bet show on Saturday. I don't currently have it now. So teaser, show up there. We'll see you there.
Big teaser.
Best bets.
Yeah, Saturday morning. Come on by.
Honestly, kind of think Virginia wins. Matt, we'll go back to your metric, your thought. Virginia had to be on the lower end of teams that are worse on the road because, my goodness, have they been bad? They've gotten blitzed multiple times away from home. I know they won at Clemson. That started to look all right. But, Kai, I think they can out-execute North Carolina, slow them down. There could be the athleticism deficiency that overwhelms them, but I'm going to go Virginia here, pulling off the upset.
They're a lot better at home. Yeah, they lost to Pitt at home, but that's it. That's the only game they've lost all year. I think they get it done. I'm also biased. I'm really rooting for Virginia here. I don't know if they're going to score. Yikes! UNC's defense, sure, a lot of it is 3-point percentage variance, but it's still pretty good in conference play, even aside from that. So that kind of worries me against the Virginia offense that just cannot score. But I do think the execution's big. I think controlling the pace is huge in this game. Obviously, North Carolina wants to run. Really hard to do that against Virginia. So if you take them out of that element and you force them to execute in the half court, UNC might be a different team. So I lean towards Virginia as well.
Yeah, Jim, Virginia is my number one biggest lopsided lovely on that metric. They just missed the cut line because their actual predictive metric wasn't high enough. They are outside the top 50 or whatever. Okay. But yeah, they are a bubble team. Well, I guess they're actually on the right side of the bubble, which is crazy. But I think UNC wins this game. I hate to say that. I really do. I know the 3-point regression monster is looming for the Tar Heels. I just feel like they get this one done. Let's finish on the mountain, shall we? Colorado hosting Utah. Utah got the better of the Buffs in the first meeting. It's a battle of wounded warriors. We saw both teams battle to their wits' end last weekend, just trying to stay in the tournament picture. But I'm just kind of bummed out. Big picture, both teams feel like they both could have been fun tournament teams had they both been healthy from start to finish. Utah still in contention for that bracket berth, Kai, but Colorado I know is starting to slip a little bit. Even when they've been healthy lately, just haven't been as dominant as we saw earlier in the year.
They just really lack wins. Yeah, that's a problem. They need this win. They have not beaten really anybody good. They beat Washington State at home, and that's about it. So yeah, they need this one like blood. I tend to lean their way in this game. You would think the mountain trip wouldn't affect Utah quite as much as other teams, but I still think it's an advantage for Colorado to be playing at home. So I lean their way.
Yeah, ultimate, one team's good at home, one team's bad on the road. Leaning to Colorado, there's a little revenge too. Utah won the first matchup by 5. Matt, this is Colorado for me. They are a little bit healthier because poor Riley Worcester just can't get back on the court for the Utes.
I know, my guy. But your guy, D. Smith, has been really good. I did not expect him to be such a little revelation, but he's been great. Setting up that big game winner and that huge win over UCLA, who is playing much better UCLA fans. I have recognized them on record as documenting this team is now good-ish. So I tip my cap to you.
Give some an ish.
Ish. I can't call it good. Sunday, did we discuss Creighton at St. John's, or is St. John's recent debacle, are they no longer worthy of a discussion on big game preview section? Let's give them a quick discussion.
Well, it's
I believe the Johnny's team's good. I do believe they're
St.
good.
John's needs wins, and is this the ultimate letdown spot for Creighton, Matthew?
They are, what did Pitino say? They're non-athletic. Hey, Rick, it's unathletic. But they're non-athletic. Guess who's not all that athletic either? It's Creighton. So you think matchup-wise, this is not a game where you're going to get blitzed off the dribble, Kai. Certainly a back against the wall, circle the wagon. Great spot as well, obviously. So, yeah, this will be one I'm sure the market will bet to St. John's -3 for some stupid reason. But I do feel like the Johnnies rise to this game and get a W.
I lean their way. It's just tough after the Pitino stuff. They're 2-8 overall in the last 10 games. That's tough. They're not dead in the tournament. They have 5 games left. They're all pretty winnable. I mean, 2 against Georgetown, 1 DePaul. You win those 3, you have 17 wins. So Creighton and Butler, those are the other 2. You get to 19 wins in the Big East tournament. It's possible. I think they need this one. I think they get it done, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, this is the home run one for them, where the other 4 aren't going to really move the needle much. I guess at Butler, will be a Q1. But yeah, this one, Matt, I think you hit the nail on the head. The unathletic thing doesn't bother them. They almost won at Creighton, lost by 1. You talked about how much better
right.
Creighton is at home. I think it's a great matchup for St. John's and the deficiencies that they have. So I'm with you. Combine the spot, like coming off this heroic home run, massive crowd performance. You go over to, I actually don't know if this is at Madison Square Garden or it's listed at Madison Square Garden.
At the Garden, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, I'll go Johnny's getting it done.
Also, yeah, I saw Trilly tweet this or someone else. Quit playing the games at UBS Arena, like whatever the hell that is. Like, just play it at the Garden and play it at the home court. Stop doing that until you're a top 10 team. But until then, just get a home court advantage. It'd be nice. That concludes our presentation today. Thank you, live
reviews,
for
Matthew,
stopping by.
as usual.
It does not conclude. It concludes the main section. We now have a bonus section, extra credits. Kai, please read the reviews.
Yeah, let me just change the little thing on our production so people know that we're talking reviews now. And
Yes, good. The rundown.
And we're done. It's so stupid how we have no production team. Okay, a couple good reviews here. Some good discussion will be had to finish the show, folks. Again, please do leave reviews on iTunes if you wouldn't mind. 5-star are great. Ask questions, leave comments, whatever you want to do. So I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4 reviews. We'll go through them as quickly as possible, discuss as we go along. Toasted Beats. The title is Danny Wolf. Should I be worried as a Yale fan for Danny Wild NIL poaching? Jones hinted at it, Jones being Yale's coach, hinted at it in a Field of 68 podcast, and his recent performances have UConn fans swarming. Unfortunately, poaching is very real in college basketball, and these players get contacted a lot. It should be against the rules, Jim. It's not. Danny Wolf, I can see him playing power level next season.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's a typo in there. Danny Wild, NIL poaching. I think that's an autocorrect from Wolf to Wild,
okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
I was hoping it wasn't. No, it's
a Wild.
I maintain my rule that if you take a transfer that's not grad, you have to. The other school has the option of hosting you for a game next year. So UConn would have to play.
I like
Yale.
that too. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Some punishment or deterrent for poaching. That would be my take, and I'm concerned that yes, he might not be in the Ivy next year.
I would think the Ivies have a little more protection because of their academic reputation, and I think the kids that go there and the parents that send them there are very like that. That's a big decision as to why they went there, and
that and the Patriot League have the most continuity year over year in this era.
Yeah,
the minutes
academia part of it, but also NIL not as much. Let's just be real. Most kids playing the Ivy aren't exactly from. They have money, right? They do have some money.
Most
it's like
probably do.
The NIL isn't a huge draw, right? Like the $400,000 backdrop, while it would appeal to anyone, it's not as like a slam dunk decision driver as it is for many. So,
yeah, you're going to Yale to graduate Yale. That's
right.
That's
it's a pretty good degree.
Part of it. Yeah,
nice degree.
GBack10 says if every sports podcast was this good. ... Wow, great title. Thank you. Long time, first time. He likes the podcast. Good. These guys get why college basketball is the best, and that joy drives the show. Fantastic. Only wishes that there was more of the podcast during the end of the stretch of the season. Yeah, we're sorry about that. Okay, his question.
Deal with it.
As a Marquette fan whose freshman year was 2013-14, Buzz leaves, then no tournament wins until Vermont last season. Is it totally unreasonable to set the bar for success at Sweet 16 this year? He said he'll be heartbroken if it's not the Final Four, because he loves this team, but how do you set reasonable expectations for the most chaotic postseason in sports? A good question, Matthew. Expectations. Well, heck, if you're a 2 seed or a 3 seed, my expectations would be Sweet 16 as well and beyond.
You do not set bars for expectations, but you just basically you enter the simulation and you play you roll the dice and you play the game of roulette. That's why you shouldn't be judging your team or your program or your coach's success based on a lottery type of postseason format. Just hope for the best. Obviously, if you're a good team and you're in a high top 4 seed, you're going to probably advance. You have a good coach, you're more likely to have a better chance of advancing and less likely chance of having like a Rick Barnes continuous early season play. But mostly just get in and hope and pray. That's all I gotta say. The gods above, the powers to be.
Yeah, it's funny. He says Marquette's only had one tournament win since 13. So is Shaka, because he did not win a single game at Texas.
At Texas, yeah.
Except maybe a play-in? No, not a play-in. Yeah, I would expect Sweet 16 if I were Marquette fans. I'd be like really bummed you don't get it. It's just so much fun to make that second weekend because you get so much more media attention and like the amount of articles and interviews. You just get to enjoy being around that team for an extra week.
It doesn't feel as one. It doesn't feel as flame outy. Agree.
Yep. So I'd be really bummed if I were a Marquette fan they didn't make the Sweet 16.
Life and happiness are all about expectations. If you set them too high, you'll be disappointed. If you don't reach them, you set them low and you exceed them, you'll be happy. There's my therapy or philosophy. Okay, two more. TJ Schlimming, sorry. Performance versus variance. He says, as a South Dakota State alum, sweet, and North Carolina fan, your podcast is the only college basketball one I listen to. He says, your somewhat irrational love of the Jack Bunnies and some irrational dislike of the Heels keeps me engaged. North Carolina obviously had some shooting luck that helped their defense early on this season. Now it seems that they're having some bad shooting luck in recent games. At what point do you think these things start to even out in your minds? How do you evaluate the difference between performance and variance? I'm okay with teams making some shots now, so hopefully they start missing again in March. Jim, this question's great. How do you determine when the team has hit their level?
Boy, hard.
It's really
you
hard.
kind of have to guess. You're pretty much guessing. I usually, if it's not an outlier in terms of like percentage, like right now, there's still opponents are making 28.6% against them in league play. It's still a little outliery, but you're fueled by specific single game performances.
Yep.
It doesn't have to get to 34% to feel regular. I believe UNC has a top 15 defense. They're 10th in KenPom. I believe they're top 15. So I at least buy it to that extent.
Yeah, I think the key is outliers, right? It's like usually teams should not hit 40% of threes against you. Usually they shouldn't hit below 30. I think if you're in that kind of range, unless you're a team like Houston that's always good at 3-point percentage defense, I think that's kind of where the outliers lay, but it's a very hard thing to gauge. It's very subjective. Okay, finally.
Quick Jack Money's down. I
love
love
this
this program.
I still love the program.
I love this program. It's why I'm so frustrated with the team this year, which I feel like should just be a lot better. I really do. And my frustration with they're very apathetic defensively. They don't play with the same the ball isn't popping around the court like the fun offenses we've seen the past couple of years. Just very isolation-y. And I don't like how Henderson feels like they're having he talks like they're having a really good year, like they're right there. It's like, I don't know, you're 8-4 in a sort of down Summit league. Like I feel like with the team you have, you should be really good, like running through this league with conviction. I don't know, just frustrated about it. I think I like Henderson big picture. Just this team doesn't rub me there. I think this is a team that will get blown out if they are in the big dance. I'd say it's a hot take.
Actually, a little bit of a deeper Summit league. I think it's deep, but there's no top good teams, right? Like really good teams.
There's a lot of,
but there's no trash besides.
It's parity.
Maybe South Dakota. Yeah, parity. Okay.
Yeah. Is any team in this league favored by double digits on a neutral against any other team?
Right.
The best team against the worst team is
right.
That spreads.
Accurate.
Okay. Last one. The updates do nothing. Time for a change. I don't know why that's his username, but I think it's funny. Time for a change in Badgerland. Says best college basketball podcast. Thank you. Great analysis. Thank you. So question comes the Badgers fan. This is being written after the Iowa loss. Is it time for Wisconsin to move on from guard? It goes from 16-4 to 17-9, throw in last year and 2021, and they've collapsed 3 out of the last 4 years. No second weekend since 2017. With the influx of money, why not go for a guy like TJ Otzelberger, I assume, and look to upgrade? Am I crazy? If not, any other names you like to get the job? Jim will get first crack at this as the local Wisconsin beat writer for Three Man Weave.
Yeah, well, it's tough because the year that they didn't collapse late, they completely surged was 2020, and you get no tournament. You don't know. Maybe that's the year you make the Sweet 16. So many schools obviously have that, we didn't get that 2020 tournament when we were playing really well. But if you guys recall, that's when Kobe King left the team and they won their final 8 games to tie for the lead and tie for the top of the Big Ten. So I don't want to totally overreact, and perhaps they right the ship a little bit down the stretch here. Let's let it bear out. I'm not ready to move on from guard. I wouldn't be personally, but again, I'm not as diehard allegiant to Wisconsin as I used to be. I don't know. Otzelberger's a good name. Any of the like monster mid-major like DeVries shirts, etc. I think those guys get mentioned for every Big Ten school for until they're hired somewhere.
I think Ott's a no-brainer if you really want to look down the road.
Does he have ties
man,
there? Is this a thing?
Yeah,
he
he's
went
a Wisconsin boy.
Oh,
Yeah, he went
Well,
to
yeah,
high school with my old
beloved
football
there.
coach. But he's also really tied in with the Iowa State AD. Like those guys have been multiple places together, I think. Like he has a lot of the boosters know him really, really well from his assistant days. So it'd probably be hard to pull him too.
I think Guard's done a fine job mostly. I think
He's
this
done
is
a fine
over.
job too, personally.
Can you imagine if Wisconsin was a terrifying defensive turnover steals press team?
Be weird.
If the Otzelberger's
Yeah.
like top 5 turnover rate defensively, that would be
How about
bizarre.
Bucky McMillan? Call Bucky. Let's bring Bucky Ball. Bucky Badger. Like that's just a perfect branding, a perfect branding is what they should. That should be the
Bucky
offseason
Ball
if you
at-
want to
at
get rid
Badgerland.
of Guard.
That would be awesome. Although he's lived in like the same town for his entire life. Like,
Yeah, like
Sanford, the high school
Alabama
that he coached
to-
at were like
right.
2 miles away from each other. No, like legitimately at the same town. Like his commute got shorter when he took the Sanford job.
Oh, so he's actually just staying the same. I didn't realize he's just literally been the same little bubble of his whole. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sanford would be a fun team in the tournament. All right, folks, that's all we have. But before you sign off, if you're watching live, please please subscribe, and come back and join us this Saturday. That's 10 a.m. Central, I think we'll be tipping off at, correct, Mr. McKeon?
That's
no
right.
change in time. We'll keep the cadence
Hopefully announcement.
as
update too,
consistent
hopefully.
as possible. But yes, please join us this Saturday and then come back next week, same time for the podcast. As always, we thank you. Take care.
Recording